Congressman Ben Cline, a member of the House Budget Committee. Congressman, your reaction?
Well, it's a great victory for the American people to move the Trump agenda forward. It's a great victory for Speaker Johnson. He's the man for the moment. And for Budget Chairman Arrington, this was a team effort, but it's only the first step. We've got a long way to go, a lot to do, and the Senate needs to look really carefully at whether or not they're going to make changes, because they really should just take up the House bill and pass it.
So what is the process? Because the Senate and the House have to have the identical budget, right, in order to open up the reconciliation process. And I know you've got what? How much in spending cuts? Was it $1.5 trillion in spending cuts? And what are you expecting from the Senate?
Well, that's right. And the Senate passed a completely different bill. It's almost like we're on different planets. The Senate doesn't want to make any spending cuts, and they want to make the Trump tax cuts permanent. We would like to extend the Trump tax cuts as far as possible, make important spending cuts, but help to implement the Trump agenda on the border, on defense, implement the DOGE savings, make sure that the tariffs are taken into account, growth is taken into account. This is moving toward a balanced budget when you take all of that into account. So it's a great victory for the American people, putting our economy back on track.
But of course, time is of the essence. You've got, of course, next week negotiations, and you want to prevent a government shutdown come March 14th. How do you feel about all of this in the coming weeks?
I feel good. You know, the Speaker's got a strong hand to go into these negotiations and say, listen, the Senate has a bigger margin than the House. They can afford to lose 1 or 2 votes. The House can't lose a single vote. And so we really do need to just take up the House bill and pass it. The senators who are more concerned about protecting the bureaucracy instead of protecting the American people and making the changes that are important for our country, they need to rethink their priorities, and hopefully they will by taking up the House bill and moving it through.
Well, let me ask you about DOGE, because the White House says more than 1 million federal workers sent in their list of accomplishments from the previous week. 21 digital civil service employees, however, resigned in protest of that letter. They're refusing to help the Department of Government Efficiency. Some House Republicans also are reportedly airing out frustrations about Elon Musk as the boss here. He's at a closed-door meeting. They were complaining. Georgia Congressman Austin Scott says he's concerned. Lawmakers, the White House, and DOGE are just not on the same page, Congressman. Another lawmaker told Fox News Digital, quote, "We're getting fed to the wolves while Elon just keeps tweeting." One called the proposed DOGE stimulus check childish, Congressman. So how do you see all of this?
Well, this is the first month, and so we're getting up and running. But when you have success at all different levels of government, you've got the executive branch under Republican control, you've got all the new cabinet secretaries working, you've got the House, all of the chairmen of all the committees working, and all the Senate chairs. So we're all working in the same direction, but there needs to be more coordination so that we avoid these types of potential missteps, and instead we're advancing the president's agenda and working for the American people to make those changes, because that's what people voted for in November.
But I mean, what about these DOGE stimulus checks? I mean, isn't it a little ridiculous that you all are fighting every day to try to come up with spending cuts to try to actually have an impact on the debt and deficits, and you're finally actually having a real impact with the DOGE proceedings, you know, cutting out spending, cutting out waste and abuse, and now you've got this. They've got this idea of sending that money to citizens. Why? I mean, why not just put it toward the debt and deficits?
Well, you were talking about interest rates earlier, and the American people are going to feel these positive changes, but they're going to feel them in indirect ways, lower rates, lower costs, more affordable housing, more affordable products. This is coming, but for those Americans who want to feel a more direct impact of what's happening in DOGE, what's happening in the federal government, you know, those impact checks are an interesting idea. But we got to make sure that we tackle the deficit, because ultimately the markets are going to respond favorably to a sincere effort to rein in wasteful government spending. And that's what we need to do, is to keep our focus on delivering for the American people by helping the economy to improve.
Yeah, no, that's my point, Congressman. So just walk us through the next couple of weeks and what happens now that it's passed the House.
Yeah, so there'll be negotiations next week. The Speaker is going to be in a strong position to push for the House bill. The Senate wants to proceed to help Trump implement his agenda. They'd be smart just to take the House bill. It would move that much faster. But we want to secure the border. That money is in both bills. So, either way, we're going to be moving quickly to advance the Trump agenda. And then the same bill will come back to the House and Senate, the identical bill for both to pass. And then the committees will begin the process of actually providing the savings, reporting those out. And so we'll get into the weeds of how you find $800 billion for the Energy and Commerce Committee and things like that. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, but it's going to be a great process.
Yeah, sure. Congressman, we'll be watching all the way along. Thank you so much. Good to see you this morning. Ben Cline joining us. Thank you, sir.